I wouldn't marry Matthew if he was the last man on earth. He once wrote me a poem that rhymed fire with desire. So cringe. That's what Linda said into the mic at her own engagement party. Not ours, hers. And not to me, to William. The man she once told me not to worry about. The room broke into polite laughter, though a few guests glanced my way with awkward half-smiles. I stood near the dessert table, holding a champagne flute I hadn't touched, staring at the woman I once planned to grow old with. She was in a satin silver gown, her hair curled like always, her lips coated in the same shade she used the night she first kissed me behind the library. My throat was dry, but my mind was clearer than ever. Cringe. She called me cringe, in front of everyone. After 3 years of calling me her favorite safe space, I took a step forward, slowly, calmly. The crowd was still chuckling when I tapped a spoon against my glass. The room quieted. William smiled, assuming I was about to toast them. I was. To Linda and William, I said, may your marriage be as loyal as her memory and as stable as her attention span. A few gasps, a few snickers. Martha, standing near the edge of the room, stiffened. I wasn't done. And thank you, Linda, for reminding me tonight exactly what I never want to return to. Linda's smile faltered. Matthew, don't start this here. I'm not starting anything, I interrupted. Just finishing what you forgot you began. Then I walked over to Martha. Her eyes met mine, wide and unblinking. Come with me, I said. She looked confused. What? Just for a moment. I offered my hand. She hesitated, glanced at Linda, who was now frozen beside William, and then she took it. I walked out with her, hand in hand, leaving behind stunned silence, Linda's makeup-perfect face crumbling under 1,000 unspoken apologies. She would never get the chance to say. We stepped into the night, cool air, faint city sounds. Where are we going? Martha asked quietly. Away from the joke. She blinked. You mean Linda? I mean me, I mean how I let myself become one. She stopped. You were never a joke. I stared at her. Same eyes as Linda, same features. But none of the venom, none of the sharp teeth hidden behind sugar-coated compliments. I wrote you poems too, I said. I know, I kept them. You kept them? She nodded. Even the one where you misspelled eternity. I laughed under my breath. It was the first time I'd felt something real all evening. The next morning, Linda's name was trending. Someone had filmed the speech, the way she mocked me, the way I toasted her in return. Poetic justice, the caption read. Linda texted me. Matthew, we need to talk, please. I didn't reply. Instead, I was at the courthouse, with Martha, filling out a form. Is this real? She whispered, pen in hand. Only if you want it to be, I said. She signed. We didn't post about it. We didn't throw a party, but the world would find out soon enough. And Linda? Linda would find out the same way she tried to erase me. Publicly. Only this time, no one would laugh. And she'd cry quietly. Not because I was gone, but because she never thought I'd be the one to leave first. My name is Matthew Clay. I used to believe love was a series of moments, eye contact across a hallway, notes passed under desks, hands brushing in crowded elevators. But now I know better. Love is not about moments, it's about choices. Who stays when you're silent? Who listens when your words are clumsy? Who holds on when you embarrass yourself in front of the world? And Linda? Linda was all moments and zero choices. We met in our sophomore year of university. She walked into a philosophy seminar 22 minutes late, dropped her iced coffee onto the carpet, muttered worth it, and winked at me. Before even knowing my name. I was the type who highlighted textbooks with a ruler. She was the type who called essay deadlines suggestions. Still, I was drawn to her, maybe because she was loud when I was quiet, daring where I hesitated, or maybe because she was the first person who didn't look at me like I was a backup option. Or so I thought. The first message she sent me wasn't romantic, it was a selfie, with her holding up my poem like it was a party prop. You really wrote this? She asked, with a laughing emoji at the end. I ignored the sting. I laughed too. That was the beginning, and the mistake. She called me thoughtful. She said I was refreshing. I helped her study for exams. She gave me playlists she never made herself. I'd sit on her dorm floor writing her name in the margins of my sketchbook. She'd scroll through her phone, smile occasionally, and tell me I was a good distraction. For a while, I thought we were becoming something real, until the night I overheard her tell William, I'd never date Matthew, he's sweet, but, like, in a puppy way, harmless, cringe even. That word again, cringe, she used it like a blade dipped in sugar, and I bled silently. William was everything I wasn't, captain of the debate team, born into money, the kind of guy who used a smirk as punctuation. He and Linda had a thing, nothing official of course, just flirty chaos at every event. She swore they were just friends, she swore I was the only one she trusted, and I believed her. Martha, her twin, saw everything. Martha was the opposite of Linda in temperament, but identical in appearance, so much so that even professors confused them. But once they spoke, there was no mistaking them. Linda spoke like she was being recorded. Martha spoke like she didn't care who was listening. We rarely spoke back then. She was always in the background, cleaning up Linda's mess. Us, returning her library books, whispering apologies on her behalf. The first real conversation we had happened when I accidentally texted her instead of Linda. I was venting, pouring my frustration into a wall of words I meant to send to the girl who confused my loyalty with weakness. Martha didn't laugh. She replied with, "You deserve better," and I ignored it. Years passed. I stayed orbiting Linda's world, sometimes close, sometimes distant. Then, one night, she kissed me. No explanation, no apologies, just lips on mine and a smirk after. I remember thinking, maybe this is finally it, maybe I'm not just the backup anymore. But even then, she never called it a relationship, she just called it comfort. I was the secret, William was the spotlight. I accepted it, not proudly, but willingly, because loving Linda meant shrinking myself. And I was good at being small. Until the night of her engagement party. When she stood under golden lights, microphone in hand, and said, "Matthew once wrote me a poem that compared my eyes to the sky, like bro, it was raining that day, so cringe." The laughter stung, not because it hurt, but because it proved everything Martha ever said about her was true. And that night, when I walked out of that ballroom with Martha beside me, I wasn't thinking about revenge, I was thinking about how I'd spent years chasing a ghost, and how the real person, the one who never laughed at me, the one who saw me and stayed silent, had been right there all along. Martha's relationship with Linda had always been complicated. As twins, they shared everything, looks, birthdays, even a few boyfriends Linda got bored of, but not affection, not intimacy. Linda thrived on chaos, Martha thrived on stillness. Where Linda wanted attention, Martha wanted peace. So they clashed. A lot. I once asked Martha why she never fought her sister harder. She replied, "Because you don't argue with hurricanes, you board up your windows and wait it out." I never forgot that, just like I never forgot the way she looked at me when Linda mocked my poems, not with pity, not with amusement, but with a kind of quiet rage. That night, after we left, we didn't speak for hours. She just sat on the steps of her apartment building, staring at the city skyline, her hand resting beside mine. When I finally spoke, I said, "Was I really that blind?" She turned to me. "No, you were just hopeful." And for the first time, I realized how much that word sounded like foolish. We didn't fall in love in that moment. There were no sparks, no sudden shift in the air, just silence, comfort, familiarity. Martha didn't rescue me from Linda. She just reminded me that I didn't need to keep waiting to be chosen. A week later, we were having lunch, just the two of us, no pretense. I told her I'd filed a leave from work. She raised an eyebrow. "Vacation?" "Closure," I said. And that's when I asked her the question. Not "Will you date me?" Not "Do you love me?" But simply, "Would you want to live a life where you never have to be compared again?" She understood what I meant, and for the first time, she said yes to something that had nothing to do with Linda. Now, we share a small apartment. She drinks tea in the mornings. I scribble in my notebook beside her. Sometimes, we don't even talk for hours, but the silence doesn't suffocate me anymore. She reads every poem, even the bad ones, especially the bad ones. She once said, "Love isn't always loud, Matthew, sometimes it's just not leaving," and she never did. Linda may have laughed when I was sincere, but Martha smiled, and that made all the difference. It started with a photo. One blurry picture, uploaded to someone's story, captured at the wrong moment from the wrong angle. Martha and I were seated at a quiet rooftop cafe. I had my head tilted, listening to her as she recite a line from my old poetry journal. She laughed at the part I always cringed at. My hand brushed hers, not even a romantic gesture, just warmth. Comfort. The caption? Did Matthew just trade Linda for her twin? And suddenly, silence wasn't safe anymore. That night, I received 14 messages from people I hadn't spoken to in months, 3 calls, and 1 voice note from Linda. I know what you're doing. You're trying to hurt me. You're using her to get back at me. How low can you go? I didn't respond. Martha saw the post the next morning. She blinked, sipped her tea, and simply said, "Well, that escalated fast." I waited. I expected her to panic, maybe even cry. She didn't. She just turned the page of her book and added, "You should talk to her." "Talk to Linda?" I asked. She nodded. "If we don't address this now, it'll fester. She'll spin it. She's probably already rewriting the narrative in her head." I hesitated. "You're okay with me meeting her?" Martha looked at me calmly. "I'm okay with the truth, just don't let her turn it into a performance." I should have known better. Linda invited me to her office. Glossy windows, high heels echoing across marble, her assistant eyeing me like I'd walked in with a ticking bomb. She was wearing red. Linda always wore red when she wanted to intimidate, or seduce, sometimes both. She didn't smile, didn't greet me, just handed me her phone. It was the same photo, but zoomed, cropped, a tighter frame, a more dangerous implication. "She's not you," I said flatly. Linda narrowed her eyes. "No, she's not, which is why I'm confused why you're dragging her into this mess." "I'm not dragging her anywhere. She came on her own." Linda scoffed. "You think marrying her erases everything you said to me, everything you promised?" "Linda," I said carefully, "what exactly do you think I promised you?" She blinked. For a moment, the confidence cracked. "You said I was your muse," she murmured. "You said you'd never stop writing about me." I looked at her, truly looked, and said, "I stopped writing about you the day you read my poem out loud to your friends at that party." She was silent. The next day, a blog post appeared on one of those insider college gossip forums. "Matthew Clay rebounds with twin sister. Is this real or revenge?" No author name, no source. But the language? It reeked of Linda. Phrases like classic avoidance, emotional whiplash, and convenient timing. Martha read it on her phone, then put the phone face down. She didn't speak for a full minute. Then she whispered, "Am I just an option?" My heart dropped. "No, God, no." She looked at me, her expression unreadable. "Then why does it feel like everyone thinks I'm your revenge dress?" I reached across the table, took her hand. "You were never part of a plan, Martha. You were the exception, the breath after the drowning." "But the drowning came from her," she said quietly. "And I look like her, sounds like her. Sometimes I even catch myself copying her mannerisms. What if I can't separate myself from her in your eyes?" The worst part was, I didn't have an answer. Days passed, more whispers, more assumptions. Linda's circle started showing up where we went. Coincidence? Maybe. But Martha noticed, especially the time William showed up at the art gallery Martha curated, pretending he didn't know she worked there. "I'm just browsing," he said, flashing his politician smile. Martha nodded politely. "The exit's that way." Later that night, I asked her if she was okay. She said, "They're not after you, Matthew. They're after me, because I broke the rule." "What rule?" She gave me a tired smile. "The one that says I should always clean up after her, but never get to keep anything for myself." That night, I couldn't sleep, not because of Linda, but because for the first time since being with Martha, she looked like she might leave, not out of anger, but exhaustion. A week later, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. Linda and William. The date was 2 months away. The venue, the same one Martha had circled in her sketchbook months ago as dream location, if I ever did something wild like a wedding. It wasn't subtle. It was a war. I found Linda that afternoon. She was sipping a green smoothie on a park bench like nothing had changed. "You didn't even like William," I said. She shrugged. "Doesn't matter. He likes me. That's enough." I sat beside her. You sent that invitation on purpose. She smiled, fake sweet. Why would you say that? Because you still think this is a game. Her eyes snapped to mine. No, you think this is a game. You think marrying Martha makes you noble. You think being silent makes you kind. But really, Matthew, you're a coward. You couldn't handle me, so you settled for the beta version. I didn't punch a wall, didn't raise my voice, just stood. She's not your shadow, Linda. You just stood in her light so long no one noticed it was never yours. That night, I didn't go home. I went to the pier, sat there for hours, watching boats pass, watching stars refuse to appear through the city smog. I thought about Martha, how she read quietly in rooms full of chaos, how she always left the last cookie, how she remembered the names of the janitors, not the deans. And then I thought about the look in her eyes when she asked, "Am I just an option?" I drove to her place at 2:17 a.m. She opened the door in a hoodie, hair messy, no makeup, eyes wary. "I don't want to be part of her war," she said before I could speak. "You're not," I said. "You're the only reason I stopped fighting." "Then why does it feel like I'm bleeding too?" I didn't have a fix, just a promise. "I'll make this right. I don't care if the world laughs. I don't care if Linda throws a parade, but I won't lose you because someone else couldn't handle being irrelevant." She stepped back. Let me in, not into her apartment, into her trust, again. But I knew I was on borrowed time, because betrayal doesn't end when people stop talking about it. It ends when the people you love stop doubting your reasons for loving them. I used to think heartbreak was loud. I thought it came with yelling, broken glass, slammed doors, but it turns out heartbreak is silent. It lives in paused text messages, in half-dialed calls, in conversations that start with "Hey, can we talk?" and end with "Never mind." Since the photo went viral, since the whispers started, since Linda turned our quiet into a spectacle, I've been unraveling slowly, and Martha noticed. She didn't ask me what was wrong. She just started setting an extra mug of tea beside mine without saying anything. She switched the music to instrumental. She started highlighting my poems again, underlining lines she liked in orange instead of yellow. And I knew. She felt it too. The weight. It wasn't about whether we loved each other, we did, it was about whether love could survive the noise Linda brought. I found myself checking her phone when he left the room. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I needed to know she wasn't walking away. Every time I saw my name on her screen, I felt both relief and fear. Was she talking to someone about me? Was she defending me, or doubting me? One night, I asked her, "Martha, do you ever regret this?" She looked up from her sketchbook. "Regret what?" "Us. The way we started. The way we're in the middle of something that was never supposed to be ours." She didn't answer immediately. She put down her pencil, closed the sketchbook, and said, "Sometimes I think we were too quiet for a world that only hears noise." I nodded. "So that's a yes?" "No," she whispered. "That's a maybe. On the hard days." And that maybe broke me more than any goodbye ever could. I started dreaming about Linda again. Not in a romantic way, in a way where she was always just a few steps ahead, turning corners before I could reach her, always looking over her shoulder and laughing like she knew something I didn't. And in every dream, Martha stood at a distance, watching, waiting, slowly fading. It started affecting my work. I missed 2 deadlines. My publisher called, asking if I was emotionally available for creativity. I almost laughed. Emotionally available? I hadn't felt available to myself in weeks. The truth was, I didn't know who I was anymore. Linda's ex, Martha's mistake, the internet's new favorite backstory. The line between peace and performance blurred every time I stepped outside. People started recognizing us, me and Martha. One girl came up in a bookstore and asked, "Are you the guy who married the twin after getting roasted?" Martha was holding my hand. She let go. I didn't reach back. That night, she didn't come home. She texted me, "Staying at my sister's, I just need space, please understand." At first, I thought she meant her older sister, then I realized, she meant Linda. Linda. I called, no answer. I drove past her apartment, lights off, no sign of her car, the world was spinning, and I was the only one without a grip. It's strange how quickly you can go from choosing someone to fearing they were never yours to choose in the first place. I sat on our balcony until the sun came up. I kept staring at the empty chair across from me. at the cold tea she left behind, at the scarf she forgot on the railing. Every fiber in me wanted to scream, to go to Linda's house, to drag Martha away, to demand why the hell she went there of all places, but I didn't. I stayed silent, because silence was all I knew how to offer anymore. 2 days later, she came back, hair tied, eyes swollen. She looked at me like I was both a question and an answer she wasn't sure she wanted. I needed to see her, she said. I know, I replied. She needed to say things. I needed to hear them. I waited. She said, she thinks I stole you. I almost laughed. She gave me away, repeatedly. She doesn't remember it that way, Martha whispered. I stepped closer. Do you remember it that way? She blinked. No, I remember you sitting at our kitchen table writing poems no one deserved. I remember you holding umbrellas over people who walked away without thanks. I remember you choosing me, not out of anger, not out of revenge, just choosing. My voice cracked. So why does it feel like I'm losing you? Martha didn't answer. She just hugged me, but even her embrace felt like a memory trying to hold on. The next week, Linda posted a video, a sit-down vlog, bright lighting, casual outfit, soft piano in the background. So, a lot's happened. I want to address some things. Especially about my sister, Martha, and Matthew. She didn't name us directly, but she didn't have to. She told her version. Of how she and I had something special, of how Martha saw an opportunity and took it, of how people don't see what goes on behind closed doors, of how Cringe was a joke between us, not an insult. The video got 1.2 million views in 48 hours. The comments were divided. Some praised her maturity, some called it manipulation, some said they felt bad for Matthew. Others called Martha a snake. Martha deleted her social media the next day. She packed a bag. I need a break from everything, she said. I reached for her wrist. Don't take a break from me. She paused. You're not the problem, but you're in the center of it. She kissed my forehead and left. No timelines, no promises, just space. And I sat in the same room where we once talked about wedding invitations, where we once named a hypothetical dog, where she once read a poem and said, you wrote this about her, but it fits me better. I didn't cry. I just sat there, staring at her empty mug. And wondered if love always comes down to this, one person staying, the other needed space. And the silence in between, devouring everything, you thought it was unshakable. Martha was gone for 12 days, not a single text, no voicemail, just 12 long days of silence and shadows. Until the 13th morning, when my inbox exploded. It started with one article, exclusive Matthew Clay's private messages to Linda surface. Was it really over? Screenshots, dozens of them, texts, voice notes, old DMs, messages dated before and after Linda's engagement party. Some of them are real, most of them were edited, all of them are damning. In one screenshot, I supposedly messaged Linda, you'll always be the one I want. Another, she's not you, but she's safe. My chest tightened, my mouth went dry. I hadn't said those things, I hadn't even opened a message from Linda in over 3 weeks. But the internet doesn't wait for facts, they wait for drama, and this was viral gasoline. I stared at the screen, horrified. People were reposting, dissecting, stitching clips from Linda's vlog over dramatic music. Proof Matthew married Martha for revenge. The beta twin was a rebound all along. A few tweets even called me an emotional abuser in a poet's clothing. My phone rang. Blocked number. I didn't answer. Then it rang again. And again. And again. I finally picked up. It was William. Tell me you didn't say that crap, he barked. I didn't. You better have receipts, because Linda has a whole damn documentary now. Click. I stood in the middle of our apartment, my apartment now, heart pound. Ding, head spinning. I texted Martha. Call me, please, it's not what it looks like. No reply. I sent another. You know me, you know I'd never say those things. Then I called, straight to voicemail. That's when I panicked. I packed a bag, threw on a jacket, drove 4 hours to her sister's countryside retreat, the place she always went when she needed to disappear. She answered the door in slippers, hair up, skin pale, eyes bruised with exhaustion. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly. I had to come. She didn't move. I didn't say those things, I said. Her eyes met mine. I know. I blinked. You, what? I know, she repeated. I knew the second I saw the syntax. Linda writes lies like she writes captions, dramatic, self-centered, over-punctuated. Relief, sharp, and hot. Then why didn't you call? She stepped back and let me in. Because knowing the truth doesn't mean I was ready to feel it. I sat on the edge of her couch. She curled into the far corner. You didn't deserve this, I said. No, I didn't, she agreed. But I chose it, didn't I? I chose to love the man my sister used as her emotional puppet for years. I'm not her puppet. No, she whispered, not anymore. I waited. She pulled a blanket over her knees. She faked screenshots, Matthew. She rewrote our story and fed it to the world. And do you know what I realized? I shook my head. No one cares if it's true or not. They just want someone to hate. And right now, that someone is me. I got up. I walked to her, sat beside her. 12 days, I murmured. She leaned her head against the cushion. I kept trying to write you a message, but nothing sounded strong enough, or kind enough, or angry enough, so I said nothing. I would have waited 12 years if I had to. Her voice broke. Don't say things like that. Why not? Because I believe you when you say them, and then when the world rips you apart, I won't know how to protect you. I took her hand. We protect each other. She didn't pull away. She whispered, Linda's not done. And she was right. 2 days later, Linda released voice recordings, clips of our old arguments, our private moments, twisted into confessionals, some real, most selectively cut, all presented with titles like, When the Mask Slips, Hear Him Say It Himself. And then came the final blow, a photo of Martha, taken from behind, standing alone at a grocery store. Caption. So this is what he left me for? It was cruel, pointed, intentional. Martha didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just stood in our kitchen, hands shaking as she poured tea. I'm tired, she said. I know, I whispered. No, Matthew, she said, voice firm now. I'm tired of being the second name, the second face, the second narrative. I thought marrying you would free me from her story, but it just made me her sequel. I froze. You're not her sequel. She looked at me, eyes wet but cold. Then stop letting her write our script. That night, I made a decision. I get into my old blog, the one where I used to post my poems before Linda turned them into punchlines. I deleted everything. Then I wrote one post, title, This is not about her. Body, I loved someone once who taught me how to write. I married someone who taught me how to be silent, but neither of them taught me how to be free. This is me, choosing freedom. No names, no screenshots, no hashtags, just words, just me. The next morning, the post had 92,000 views, and Martha was still there. She made pancakes, she wore my hoodie, she said nothing. But when I handed her a printed copy of the post, she read every line slowly. Then she said, Matthew? Yeah? She looked up. I'm not leaving. I smiled. Then neither am I. The charity gala was Linda's favorite battlefield. Cameras, flashing lights, carefully curated guest lists, exactly the kind of stage she loved to dominate. This year, it was bigger, brighter, sponsored by her company and William's father's media network, and the guest list, unavoidable. We received the invitation in a cream envelope sealed with gold. Martha held it between her fingers like it was a live grenade. Are we going? She asked. I answered with a question. Do we want to keep letting her define us? She paused, then nodded. We'll go, but we don't play by her rules. Martha wore a deep blue gown, no sequins, no drama, just elegance. I wore black, no tie, just enough polish to look like I belonged, but not enough to look like I was trying too hard. We arrived fashionably late, cameras turned, whispers followed. That's her, Martha, the twin. Is that really Matthew? Didn't he cheat? I heard she forgave him. I heard he never did it. It doesn't even matter anymore. But it did. We walked in together. Linda spotted us instantly. She was in white, an ironic choice, considering the shade of malice in her eyes. She didn't wave, she didn't smile. She simply excused herself from her circle and walked toward us, heels clicking like accusations. Martha's grip tightened around my hand. I squeezed back. Linda stopped a few feet away. Well, she said, voice sweetly bitter. I see you've both recovered from the scandal. We're fine, Martha replied calmly. You look good in white. Thanks, Linda said. I wore it for closure. Martha raised an eyebrow. Whose? Linda smiled. Everyone's. Before I could speak, a photographer interrupted. Can we get a shot of all three of you? The internet will love it. We declined, politely, firmly. Linda, however, turned and posed, alone. As we walked away, she called out just loud enough, "Don't worry, Matt, you can always write about this later, or maybe let her do it, since she likes to finish your stories now." Martha stopped, turned around, and walked back toward Linda. I didn't follow. This wasn't my confrontation, this was hers. I watched from a few feet away as Martha synced. Owed toe-to-toe with her sister, the two halves of the same mirror are finally facing each other. "I need you to stop," Martha said quietly. Linda tilted her head. "Stop what?" "Living like your story doesn't hurt anyone else, pretending this whole thing is just a messy chapter you're allowed to narrate however you want." Linda laughed. "I'm not pretending anything, I'm just telling my truth." "No," Martha said, voice firm now. "You're telling a version of the truth that protects your ego and feeds your followers, and you're doing it at the expense of every boundary I ever tried to draw with you." Linda's smile wavered. "So what, you're the victim now?" "No," Martha said. "I'm the consequence." Silence. A pin could have dropped. The music faded in my ears. Because at that moment, I realized something. Martha didn't need me to protect her, she needed me to see her. Not as Linda's twin, not as my recovery, not as my proof of growth, but as someone who had always been quietly surviving her own storm, long before I stepped into it. Linda tried to speak, but Martha had already turned. She walked back to me, took my hand, and whispered, "Let's go home." We left the gala without dessert, without goodbyes, but with peace, until the next morning, because Linda wasn't done. At 8:04 a.m., she posted a video titled, "Closure, My Way, 27 minutes, she cried at minute 9, laughed at minute 17, and showed another set of fabricated screenshots at minute 25. She ended the video with, "Some people write poems, I lived one, and I just hope the next girl he writes about knows she's a chapter, not the book." It went viral in 2 hours, trending in 4, and by the end of the day, reporters were outside our apartment. Martha pulled the curtains shut. "Block the world out," she whispered. "I can't," I said. "Then what will you do?" "End it. Once and for all." I didn't tell her how, just kissed her forehead and left. I went live, on the same platform Linda used. No filters, no music, just me. One take. Raw. I started with, "I never wanted this to be content." Then I pulled up a folder. Hundreds of real screenshots. My unedited conversations. My voice notes. Even journal entries, time-stamped, proving what I felt and when. Then I looked straight into the camera. "Linda, I loved you once, but you taught me to shrink, to hide, to edit myself in case I embarrassed you." "Martha." "She taught me the opposite. She let me breathe, and while you were collecting sympathy points, she was collecting every broken piece of me you left behind. So no, she's not a rebound, she's recovering, and you can keep trying to rewrite history, but I've stopped writing about you, because poetry is for the living, and you, Linda, only thrive in the graveyards of what you ruin." I ended the stream, posted nothing else, closed the app, and went home. Martha was sitting on the floor, knees pulled to her chest. I sat beside her. She rested her head on my shoulder. No words, no explanations, just the quiet after a storm we both survived. 3 hours later, Linda deleted her video. Her account went private. And for the first time in years, she didn't post anything the next day. We lit a candle that night. Not to mourn, but to mark something new. Not a climax of chaos, but the quiet start of something worth protecting. 3 months passed. No new videos, no new scandals, no more whispers in cafes or side-eyes on the subway. Linda vanished from the algorithm, just as quickly as she had dominated it. Her silence wasn't peace, it was retreat, but I wasn't waiting for her next move, because I had already made mine. We'd kept it quiet on purpose, no social media announcements, no engagement photos, just one lawyer, one contract, and one powerful silence that would do what Linda's voice never could, end things permanently. It started with a name. Linda had used my name in sponsored videos, my poems, my journals, our private texts. She called it artistic license, but our lawyer called it what it really was, unauthorized commercial use of intellectual property, and so we sued. Not for millions, just enough to get her attention, just enough to freeze her next brand deal, just enough to remind her that consequences don't need applause. The court filing leaked. People called it petty, Others called it brave. Some said, he's doing too much, but they didn't know how much it cost to survive a person who could weaponize your vulnerability for content. Linda tried to fight it, claimed parody, claimed memory, claimed victimhood, but we had timelines, receipts, metadata. When the judge reviewed her voiceovers paired with my real journal entries, he said one thing: this isn't commentary, this is exploitation. She settled, quietly, privately, and part of the agreement, she was required to upload a public statement, unedited, without background music, without brand overlays. It lasted 47 seconds. I want to apologize to Matthew Seale A. and Martha Clay. I misrepresented parts of our history. I understand now that art does not justify harm. I will be stepping back from content creation indefinitely. It didn't trend, people barely noticed, but that was the real win, because silence had finally reclaimed its power. We never reposted it, never acknowledged it publicly, we didn't need to. That same week, our wedding happened. No influencers, no photographers, just 27 people, and one vow Martha made that I'll never forget. I don't promise you perfection, Matthew, I promise you presence, every moment, every morning, every mess. I will not film it, I will not narrate it, I will not turn it into anything other than what it is, ours. I didn't cry, but my hands shook, because I had spent years chasing the wrong kind of love, the kind that needed an audience, and now I stood across from someone who only needed me. William was there too, surprisingly. He came alone, offer a nod during the toast. And when we met outside by the parking lot later, he said, "She's spiraling." I didn't respond. He added, "I think she thought the world would pick her side." I looked at him. They did once, and then they scrolled. He laughed under his breath. Poetic as ever. "No," I said. "Just free." By our 1-month anniversary, I had sold my first novel, not a poetry book, a memoir, but not about Linda. It was about Martha, about silence, about loving someone who didn't need a spotlight to shine. The title? Volume Off. We dedicated it to no one, just a blank page, because not every story needs an origin villain. Linda moved to another city, or maybe another platform, we never checked. She posted a farewell video once. A blurry clip of an ocean, her voice faint in the background. I used to think being loved by many would heal what wasn't loved by one. It got 318 views, and no comments. Martha saw it, and said nothing. I asked, "Do you feel bad for her?" She shrugged. "I feel bad for the version of her who could have stopped before it went too far." But we didn't talk about Linda again. We built a life of small things, shared grocery lists, midnight tea, books stacked beside the bed, and silence, intentional, welcomed, safe. One evening, while rearranging boxes in the storage room, Martha found an old notebook. It was my first one, back when I still signed poems M to L. She handed it to me without judgment. I flipped to the last page. There it was, my final line to Linda, written months before the gala, before the lawsuit, before the heartbreak became headlines. "One day, I'll write something not about you, and that day, I'll finally know who I am." I looked up at Martha. She was holding our daughter, asleep, wrapped in a blanket with poetry lines stitched along the hem, her eyes, Martha's smile, my silence. And I finally knew who I was. It was not Linda's mistake. I was not the joke she made at a party. I was not her content. I was not her caption. I did not cringe. I was chosen, by someone who didn't need me to bleed to believe I had value. By someone who didn't need to break me to feel big. By someone who loved me, even when the world stopped clapping. And as I kissed my daughter's forehead and whispered the first poem I ever wrote for her, I realized something Linda would never understand. The best revenge isn't proving someone wrong, it has nothing left to prove.